Hello everybody, welcome to this presentation on NX New Sketcher. My name is Bryan Fischer. I am an NX application engineer out of Prolim out of the Cincinnati office. If you have not done so already, please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. We have many useful videos and webinars that we post there. On today's agenda, we will be going into NX New Sketcher. This was introduced in 1926. However, at that time, it was not the default. In 1953, it became the default. We'll be going over how to turn New Sketcher off and on. In addition, we'll go over some sketch preferences. We'll dig into some self-help that can help you guide you through this tool. Additionally, we'll be working with some legacy sketches. Then we'll move on to working with imported geometry, dig into some basic interaction, and then finally wrap it up with some advanced interaction. The first thing we want to look at is how we can turn the NX New Sketcher tool off and on. In 1926, the New Sketcher tool was not default. However, you could go into your utilities, feature toggles, and turn it on. However, once you turned it on, you would have to get out of NX and come back in for it to take effect. In 1953 and 1980, this became the New Sketcher tool became the default. However, you could still come back and turn on the old Sketcher if you choose. You'd have to go into File, Utilities, Early Access Feature, and in the Find there, you would just type in Sketch, and you'd be able to turn it off and on. Just remember, once you start a sketch in the New Sketcher, you will be permanently in the new sketch. However, you are still able to have the New Sketcher on and modify old sketches. We will be going over that later on in this presentation. As we open up the New Sketcher, we'll notice that there are some things that are quite different. It looks different. Your toolbar, you are missing tools that you may be used to in the past, such as dimensioning. This dimensioning can be done quickly and easily now, just by clicking on a curve. Additionally, you'll notice that it automatically finds relationships between curves. You don't have to go in there and put constraints like we did in the past. Constraints have been replaced by relationships. These relationships can be finely tuned by the user. You can be made persistent for a workflow if it's needed. This simplifies the workflow and helps you create it and make it a little bit easier by dimensioning. You will also notice that dimension is now king, where in the past the constraints were the king. So in other words, if you go and edit a dimension, you have the ability to relax and override a constraint. In this case, we now call them relationships. You can go in and you can temporarily relax dimensions or relationships, depending on how you like to use your workflow. We'll be going over all that as we get a little deeper into this. Now let's go and look at some of the sketch preferences here. So as you see here, within the sketch preferences, and within the sketch, you'll notice that we now have a shaded area. These shaded areas lets us know that it's a closed loop. Closed regions get lighter or darker as you have more of them. Additionally, you'll notice that the movable curves are now brown. Defined curves, which means these curves have been defined with either dimensions or relations, turn black. These are non-movable curves now. That's not saying you can't relax them and move them. But if you don't have the relax on at that time, they're not movable. You can also see here within the sketch preferences, you can go in there and change these colors if you do not like those particular colors. For example, your movable curves. If you don't like the brown, you can easily go in there and change it. If you want to change the closed region to a different color, you can do that. If you don't want to see the closed region, the shaded area, you have the ability to go and turn that off and on. Another change you may notice right away, these dimensions do not have an attribute or expression. These expressions have been turned off. Not every dimension needs an expression. You can turn these expressions on real easy. This allows you to make it a little bit cleaner of a sketch and not have a million expressions to go through when you're trying to make, for example, a part family. Now let's see how Siemens have added information that can help you with the new sketcher. Back in 1899, Siemens added this new SelfHelp. If you hit your F1 key when you're in certain commands, it'll bring up videos, tutorials, and such. If you watched my webinar back in What's New in 2020, I went over this pretty good. However, in the NX Sketcher, they have added a lot of videos. So if we go on a little bit more here and look at this, they have all topic, sketch tutorials, dialogue help box, and so on. Let's go ahead and jump into NX here. I have NX 1980 open here. And if we go into our sketch, right away we'll notice that our sketch is a little bit different. You'll see these planes come up, and we'll talk a little bit more about this stuff later on. But right now I just want to show a little bit of the self-help, and then we'll move on to how to use imported geometry and legacy geometry and so on. So now that I'm in NX and I'm in my sketcher, if I hit my F1 key on my keyboard, you'll notice on the left-hand side here, we'll have information that shows up. This information here, there are small videos that you can go through and look at it. So you can look at how to drag curves, make curves move and such. These videos also have verbiage on it, so that audio would turn your audio on and you'll hear them guiding you through these steps. You also have this nice area called Get Started. If I hit Get Started here, you'll notice there's a lot more information here. For example, working with legacy, edit sketch, and so on. If I come up here and I hit my commands, this will go over the different commands. If you hit different ones on here, it'll go in and guide you along and how to use that command along with the video. You also have information down here. This shows all topics. This here will show you how Sketch Extend How to Help. This will take you in to a web page, and that web page will be a Siemens web page, and that Siemens web page will have information for you to go in and look. So let me bring that web page over so you can see it. And you see here, it gives you examples, and you have a lot of reference information up here. You have sketch tutorials that you can go through. There's a lot of useful information here. So if you ever get stuck, you can always hit your F1 key while in the command, and it will bring you in to different things depending on where you click. And what I mean by that, it depends on what you have up here selected. Additionally, you have one here called, this will give you all the commands within that particular command, and it will go through and tell you each dialogue in it. So as I was saying, here in the extended dialog box, it goes through and explains everything within that command. So your dialog box, it tells you how to trim the extension, select a curve, and so on. This here will depend on which command you are in when you hit that. So there's a lot of useful information that you can use within NX itself when you're going in and using the new sketcher. There are a lot of videos embedded in here, and there's a lot of information. So utilize it as much as you can, and I find it very useful myself. Now we'll move on to another portion of our presentation here and start getting into some examples. Before we get into those examples, there is one other area I want to look at for the self-help. This is within the welcome page of NX. You'll see here we have a section that's What's New. And within that What's New, we can quickly go in there and search for information that's new. Additionally, we have this highlight area that we can turn off and on. You'll see these little red dots next to some of these commands here. We have the ability to turn that off and on. What it does there, it lets you know if there's been a change with any of those commands. Additionally, we can come over here and say what's new since all the way back to NX11. I'm going to go and switch this to 1926. And within the area here, I'm going to type in sketch. And you'll see that this information comes up and allows me to go in and quickly see what's changed since 1926. One area that changes is what's new in NX Sketcher here. Once you hit this, it will bring up a web page and give you information on that. I'll go ahead and pull my web page over here. And you can see here it talks about the new NX Sketch. It goes in and explains a lot of the interaction, editing, and such. Additionally, you can come in here and you have areas that you can click here or even over here. So this is a quick area that you can go in if you're updating your NX and see what's new. Now let's start getting into some of these examples I talked about. The first thing we want to look at is working with legacy sketches. This is anything that was created using the old sketcher. And what we're going to do here is I'm actually going to create a part family and use the old sketcher. And then we'll open it up in 1980 and we'll show how to either renew it or just edit it. Now remember, once you edit a sketch in a new solver, you're now in that new solver. However, you don't always need to renew it. If you're just changing a dimension size, I would suggest to just go in and edit the parameters. And now if you're adding to that sketch, I would suggest to go in and renew and edit. And we're going to go through that as we go through this example with this part family. So let's jump back into NX here. Let's go to 1926. So here you can see I'm in 1926. And in 1926 here, I actually have the monthly update for the 1946, but that's just a monthly update of the 1926. So within here, if we go into this particular sketch here, you'll see that we're in the old sketcher. I can quickly go in there and see this because we have constraints, we have rapid dimension, and such like that. Those particular commands will be gone when we jump back into the new sketcher. So let's quickly go in and just make a parts family out of this. I'm going to go in and actually add this to it. And let's see here. We got the hub diameter, handle diameter. I'm going to go ahead and add that. And let's change this size to 100. And we'll go in and create this part family real quick. And as you can see, the members were created successfully. So we now have a part family. And I'm going to go ahead and OK this. And we'll go open one of them parts up real quick. So here's one of the parts that I just created out of the part family. You can see here, if I go and put these side by side, we have two different sizes. All right, let's go ahead and close out of this. And we're going to go back into 1980 now. And we're in 1980 here, and I'll show you that real quick by going to my help and about. And you see that I'm in 1980. And once again, I do have 1996, which is the monthly update of the 1980. I'm going to go ahead and open that up real quick. That same part family that we were just in. Go in our tools, and we're going to go to part families. And within here, you can see here's the information where I changed it. However, if we come back over here and we look at one of our sketches, you see right away what comes up. It's telling me that it's a legacy sketch and that I have the choice of either editing parameters, renewing and edit, or cancel. Well, in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and say edit parameters. At that time, I can go in here and switch any of these dimensions. If I click on this one, for example, let's go ahead and just make that a 10. You'll notice that it updates. I didn't have to go into the new solver. I'm easily able to go in there and change that dimension and size just by going in and saying renew, not renew and edit, but just edit. Now the other thing I wanted to point out, with the new solver, not every dimension has an expression. This can come in handy, especially when you're in part families and you're trying to go through and you're trying to find a particular line that you want to use, add to your part family. You have the choice to either turn them off and on in the new solver. It makes it a little bit short of a list. That way you don't have to go and search through, 15 different dimensions for one dimension that you want to add to your part family. So that's a quick example there of how we're able to go in and edit an existing sketch without having to renew it. Now let's look at it if we wanted to renew this sketch. So let's go ahead and turn on a sketch here. And I have my sketch here, and this time, I'm going to actually renew and edit it. As soon as I renew and edit it, right away we notice that there's a difference up here in our toolbar. Additionally, we see these relationships now. Now in this particular example here, I'm just going to go and add something. I'm going to go and add a rectangle. Now this rectangle is very similar. These curve commands are pretty much the same as they were in the old solver. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to add me a rectangle. And I'm going to finish it. Now, I didn't go and put dimensions, constraints, or relationships in this. We'll go over that a little bit later. I just wanted to show an example of when to renew it and when to just use the edit. So now at this time, if I finish this off and I come in here and I make this my current feature, and I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to extrude that. So I'm going to come and pick my curves here and use that as an extrude. Let's go ahead and flip it. We're going to subtract it and we'll say okay. Now, at any time, if I go back to this sketch, it's already renewed and I don't get that option to renew or just edit. I have to actually go in and use the new solver. But if I go to any of my other sketches that I have not renewed, I still have that ability to go in there and just say edit parameters and go through the parameters that I want to edit. So you don't always have to go in and renew a sketch. My recommendation is to just go in and edit it if you're just adding the dimension. But if you're adding to that sketch or if you're changing it drastically, you may want to go in and actually renew it. So that's the new solver, how to go in and edit it and how to go in and actually renew it if you need to. Now with this next example, we're going to start going in and looking how we can work with imported geometry. This disc break here probably looks familiar to some of you if you've gone in and you've seen any of the Siemens videos on the new Sketcher. We're going to go in and actually import this in, and the purpose of this particular demonstration is not to get into the relationships and stuff like that, but to show how it treats it when it comes in, and we'll jump into relationships and some of these other features later on. So now that we're back in NX, we're in 1980 here, I'm going to come in and I'm going to import this geometry here that I have. This is particularly on one is an IGES file, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to import it. Okay, wait for it to come in real quick here. Now that we have it, we're going to go ahead and create a sketch. And then we're going to come over here, and under include, we have an area called add curves. Once I come in and add these curves, it's going to automatically recognize some of these areas and features. And you can see if I click on a few of these, you'll see that we have relationships there. I can relax those relationships, and it's intelligent enough right now to know that this is a pattern. So if I change one of those holes that I selected there, it would change with it. Let's go ahead and deselect those real quick. If I click on it here, you can see here that we have these relationships. This is an offset, so if I go and change this particular one, I'm able to go in and stretch it like this, and it retains those relationships. If I change one of these particular holes here, let's go ahead and select one here. And let's just say, I don't know, 2, just to make it a little bit tinier so you can see here. You notice that it retains all those relationships in those. Later on, we'll get into how we can relax those relationships. But as you can see here, it is a very intelligent feature. It comes in and recognizes that these are, in this case, a pattern for all those holes and offsets and things like that. It's a nice little feature that allows you to quickly come in and take geometry imported from another system and be able to use it for what you need. Now that we've seen how it handles curves and imported geometry, let's go ahead and look at this synchronous cross-section. Synchronous cross-section allows me to take in geometry, a solid geometry, and be able to create a cross section with it. And that cross section would be put into Sketcher, the new Sketcher tool, and you can utilize that Sketcher to change your solid. Now let's jump back into NX here, and I'm going to import some geometry here. And we're going to take this geometry, and this is a particular one is a parasolid of the same brake pad. Now if we wanted to make changes to this, in the past we could go in and use all the synchronous tools. We still can do that. You can see here over here on the left here, this is just a body with no features. But we do have a nice tool now with the synchronous called Edit Cross Section. This allows me to come in and select my faces. I'm going to go ahead and select the faces that I need and deselect the ones I don't need. We're going to go and select our plane. And then right here we had an Edit Curve. We're going to go ahead and hit that. And as you notice, it puts us right into the new Sketcher. So this new solver here, once I go ahead and I hit my dimension here and I move it, you'll notice right away we can come in there and make changes to it. And if I make a change to this particular hole, notice it recognized these other holes around here and it allowed me to make those changes. So this particular tool here allows me to use another synchronous tool. If I choose to use the new Sketcher solver, I can quickly go in there, edit my cross section, and make changes. If I wanted to make another change, I just come in, I say edit parameters. Once again, edit section. Come and pick whatever particular feature I want to change. Make the change, and it will update the model. It's a pretty cool little tool here that allows you to come in there and take complex geometry that may not have features and start making quick changes to it. Now we're going to get into some basic interaction here. We're going to jump in how to create a sketch. Not a whole lot's changed, but there are some small changes I do want to point out there. We'll look at movable objects. These are objects that are not defined, which used to be fully constrained or not constrained. We'll show how you can turn show movable off and on. We'll get into relations. We'll talk about how we can relax those relations. We'll then get into persistent relations and show how we can add them. We'll look at object action versus action object. We'll look at selecting points, how we can rotate and move objects. And then we'll get into some dimensions. So the first area I want to point out is create a sketch. In 1953, you can see that was the first version that we had the new solver as the default. At that time, the orientation was taken away. In 1980, we reintroduced the orientation. This was a request by many of our users. I'll go over and show those two real quick and show how the difference of those two work. So let's jump back in NX here, and we're going to look how we can create a sketch, and we'll show a little bit of difference there on the dialogue. So here you can see I am in 1953. This was the first version that the new Sketcher was introduced as a default. Just like prior, up here in our left-hand corner, we have our sketch, create a sketch. Now the big difference you'll notice right away from the older version of the Sketcher, this solver now has these planes that we can select. We can still select date on planes and faces and such like that. We also have up here on path and on plane just like we have in the past. And you can also reset the dialogue like we have in the past. Now the difference is at this time they did not have the orientation dialogue there. So you pick your your plane. You could reverse the direction, and you could come in here and move these points. However, at this time, we did not have the orientation like we had in the past. So let's go ahead and finish this one, and we'll go back into 1980, and I'll show how that one looks a little bit different. So in 1980, this is 1980 here. As you can see here, we are in a 1980. And if we look at sketch, you'll notice we now have this orientation that has been added back. This is a way to orient the sketch, which many of us have been used to for many years with the old sketch solver. We still have the on plane and on path. And if we go ahead and pick any of these, we could even pick these planes here. Right away, we can come in and we can reorient that. If I pick something that you can see here, where as soon as I pick a different axis, you see it goes and shows us which way that would be. We can still come in here and reverse it if we like. And we do have the origin point where we can move that. So that's the slight difference between 1953 and the 1980. We'll go ahead and create this sketch. And then now we'll be getting into some of the other tools within the sketcher. So the next area we want to look at here with the new solver is the toolbar. So you see on the above here, this was a NX 1926, which had the old solver. You can see there the sketch area looks the same. You can also see that our curves are pretty much the same. The area that really is different is the area that's for our solve, where in the past we had constraint and dimensions. We no longer have the rapid dimensions, and we no longer have the constraints. We now have what we call relations. You can also see we have some relaxed dimensions, and then down here in this area here, we now have what are relationships that we can add to our sketch. Additionally, we have the area where we can relax persistent relations or relax our dimensions. So we'll jump into NX here and we'll take a look at some of these differences. So we're back in NX 1980 here, and jump into that sketch that we started to create earlier. The first thing we want to look at here is we now have a vertical axis that we can use, and we also have a horizontal axis that we can interact with. These can be used to locate our sketch, and we do also have a sketch origin point. So as I stated before, a lot of these particular tools work in the same manner when you go to create them. The difference is what the results are. You get some more relationships that are automatically added for you. So let's go ahead and use a profile real quick and look at some of this information. You can see here, just like in the past, it will lock onto that axis. Same here, we will get a vertical and a horizontal axis that we're able to lock onto, I'm sorry. And again, you can see here, we're going in and I'm just creating a square real quick, or rectangle. And as soon as I do this, you'll notice that it will come in and shade that. The other thing we want to look at is the movable curves here. You can see here they are brown because this is at default right now. I have not made no changes to it. Earlier in the presentation here, you saw how I showed how you can change your preferences and change those particular colors. You can change your shaded area and you can change your movable objects. If I come in here and turn the show movable off, you'll notice that the lines turn black. This does not mean you're still able to move these. If I came in here and grab them, I'm still able to move them. So my recommendation is to leave the show movable on. It just makes it a little bit easier to be able to determine what is not defined yet. If we look down here, it tells us a sketch is partially defined with 4 movable curves. As you've seen what I did earlier, I'm able to go in and drag these curves. I also have the shaded area. The shaded area, again, lets us know that this is a closed loop. If I came in and I drew a circle in here, you'll see that the shade gets darker or lighter. This lets us know that there are multiple areas that have been enclosed. If I come in here and I select a line, you will get a dimension. This dimension here, you can see here on this particular one, it is approximately 11.798. If I click on this dimension, I will get handles. I can take these handles and I can drag it. Additionally, as I click on this particular line, you will see I have relationships that are being shown now. This relationship is a horizontal. Attached to that particular line, we also have these. These are a vertical. Notice I can click to turn them off. So if I click on that particular relationship, now that vertical relationship is relaxed. If I finish this command, I will now have my dimension there. If I click on this particular control point, I can come in and relax this dimension, relax this relationship, and I can come in there and move it. Notice it's no longer vertical. This is a quick way that you can come in and change your sketch to what you need. If I need that curve to be vertical again, I can click on my sketch, come over, and hit the vertical. If we undo that and we do it in the opposite manner, where I come over and I click my vertical, you'll see it ask me select motion, curve, or point. I'll go ahead and select my curve here that I want to be in this manner. And then I have my select stationary curve or point. Notice we have another solution here, however. This particular solution says select fixed curve or point. I'm going to go ahead and use my SelfHelp here and hit F1 and bring up the web page here and show you what that particular command means. So what you notice over on the left-hand side, we get information. This particular information would take us through these different commands, and in this case, it's going through the different relations and lets you know what those relations do and how to use them. However, I'm concerned only with the dialog box for this particular command. So I'm going to come over and I'm going to say make dialog box, and I'm going to come in there and look at my information. Notice right away, select fixed curves tells me what that particular dialog in the box will do. So I have different solutions that I can get depending on how I select that. Let's go ahead and look and see how that particular select fixed curve or point, what the different results will be. I'm going to pick the curve up here and pick this point this time. And I'm going to come in there and say apply. You will get different results depending on how you select that. I'm going to undo that one. And let's go ahead and do it with the opposite side this time. You can see the different results depending on what you need there. I'm going to cancel out of this one, and we're going to continue to look at some of these relationships. So what we see right now is this sketch is partially defined with 6 movable curves. I can come in here and I can dimension these just by clicking on it like I did on the other one. Click on my dimension, put my size, hit my enter and my middle mouse button, and we will now start defining this. Maybe I want to make this here collinear with this particular horizontal. I can come and click this, click my line here, and tell them to be collinear. So we have object action, or we can do action object. We just did our object action where we actually picked our curves first and a horizontal line, and then I pick the action. Let's go ahead and pick our action first, collinear. And we're going to select this edge here. and this vertical axis. And now we're slowly going in there and we're able to start constraining our sketch. We're now down to 2 movable curves. These are the 2 circles that I created. Because they are movable, I can come in there and just drag them now anywhere I want to. However, I could come in there and dimension them also. Let's go in and do the location on these 2 particular circles now. I'm going to go ahead and compress this some so we have a little bit more room. And we're going to go ahead and look how to dimension these and locate them. So if I click on this here, you see I do get a control point here. I get a control point here also. If I click on this particular one, I get another dimensions that show up. These are the offsets that I could put in there. If I hit my escape and go ahead and click this particular control point, I can drag that. I can also come in and click on this, get my control point, click on my line over here, and I will have my dimensions that I can come in and create. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and hit the 6 inches, and I'm going to accept that. If I click on my arc again, I get the dimension that I can come in and change. And I could come in here and I could quickly go in and change this one also. And we will begin to quickly be able to go in and constrain. Well, in this case, we call it define. We don't call it constrain anymore. And it tells me I now have 2 movable curves. Where am I able to move it? Look where I'm able to do. I can quickly come in there and I can tell that I need to add 1 more dimension here. Let's go ahead and select my point again. And I'm going to come down and select my new edge here. We're going to type in 3. And now I have a sketch that is fully defined. And at any time, if I want to change this particular sketch, I can come in and actually add dimensions. And these dimensions will override or relax some of these other relationships that I've added. So let's go ahead and look what I mean when I say that if I add dimensions that I can make changes and that it will go in and actually relax relations. Now this is going to be a total different way of thinking for many of us old draftsmen. Because back in the day, we would know this as double dimensioning, and you would not want to do this if you were actually going in and detailing a drawing. However, this will give us some flexibility in the sketcher. So I'm going to go ahead and add a dimension over here. Notice when I add this dimension, we do have some relationships that do show up, some points. In this particular time, we have our collinear relationship that shows up. However, if I click on my dimension, it will create a dimension. If I go ahead and accept this, it still tells me that this sketch is fully defined. In the old solver, this would tell us that it was over-constrained if we had these 2 lines as equal. However, with the new solver here, if I came in and I made these equal or parallel, let's get a whole equal sign, not the parallel. And I'm going to select this one. I'm going to select this one. I'm going to apply it. It allows me to do that. If I wanted to change one of these sides, I can quickly click on the dimension. And notice that those particular relationships, in this case, the vertical ones are already relaxed. Let me move this out of the way. And if I try to move it, notice what occurs. It allows me to go in there and make these changes. It's going in and it is relaxing these constraints. So when I say that now the dimension is king, not the relationship, this is what I mean. But you can see here real quick that we still have equal and equal. But if we zoom out a little bit and look at this, you can see what it did. It relaxed these collinear. It relaxed this horizontal. I'm going to go ahead and accept this, and I'm going to go ahead and fit my sketch here real quick. And notice what occurs when I do that now, though. Curves become brown again. Those that have been relaxed are no longer defined. So you must watch when you're adding these dimensions and make sure you're getting what you want. I'm going to go ahead and undo this and take us back to this particular one where it was fully defined. And we'll look at some other areas here. Okay, so we have the sketch fully defined again here. This time I'm going to re-add that dimension, and we're going to look over some things here. So to add that dimension, I just use my left mouse button. I click on my dimension, and now I have a live dimension. Now, the last time we went, we just drug this arrow, and you saw what it did. This time, let's go ahead and go down to our horizontal relation here. I'm going to click on the horizontal relationship here, and now I'm going to drag it. You can see how it acts a little bit different. We do have another manner that we can get this same result. I'm going to undo this, and I'm going to come up and look at my area that says fixed curve. If I hit a fixed curve, it's going to fix that particular curve. Now when I click on my dimension, I can come in there and get the same results as if I was relaxing that one relationship prior to that. So be careful when you're going in there, and if you're not getting the result you want, chances are you may have to relax a relation or add a fixed curve depending on what you're trying to achieve. Now let's go ahead and look at some of the options we have with our sketch. So if I click it and right click it here, you can see here I can actually come in, edit the annotation, convert to reference, hide it, delete it. I can display it as PMI. I can make it as a new sketch group. We'll get into that here in a second. I can edit the value, or I can add and remove expressions. This allows you to take that particular dimension and make an expression that you can use later on. Let's continue on and look at some of these relationships here. I'm going to come in and I'm going to draw me a line this time. And I'm going to put it straight down the middle. I'm going to click on that particular line. Well, let me exit out of that command. And I'm going to make it a reference dimension. Well, a reference line. Apologize on that. Now, if I click on my line, I can see I have these start points. And I can also come in here, click on that point, click on a line, and I can make midpoint aligned. I can do the same thing with the same curve down here. Click the line, left mouse button, click the point, click my other line, and make midpoint. If I come back in here, I'm going to go ahead and delete these dimensions, and notice it turns brown, but I'm going to take my first circle here, click my circle, click my point, and my line again, and come in here and click my midpoint. I now have my circle right in the middle. Let's go ahead and add some chamfers here. If I come in here and add a chamfer, you'll see right away I get some brown lines. That's because now I have not defined that particular chamfer. If I click on my chamfer line here, just left mouse button, you'll see I have options of how I can come in there and dimension it. I can choose any of these options and decide how I want to dimension my curve. I'm going to go ahead and just select this one this time. Hit my middle mouse button. If I come back and I select my dimension, right mouse button, and say edit value, let's go ahead and hit the edit annotation. I'm sorry. You notice I have options here of what I can do. I can make it a reference. I can turn the expressions on. I can actually come in here and say horizontal or vertical. So if you dimension something and it means that you later on want to change, you can always come back and change it. Now let's look at some of these other things. For example here, relax dimensions. If I turn relax dimensions on and I come to drag any of my curves, you notice those that turn magenta. Those are the ones that are being relaxed at the time as I go and make this change. The same will occur with relaxed relationships. If I come in and start changing any of these, notice that I'm able to go in and just move it because it relaxed those particular relations. So if I came in here and try to move this line, notice I can do that because my relations are relaxed. I'm going to go ahead and undo that. And that's just some of the things that we're able to do within here. It helps you go in there and have more control of your sketch. You may have to take your time at first because it is not double clicking everything. You single click with one button and you get your dimension and you get your choice here of which dimension to go with and what you exactly want to do with this particular dimension. Escape out of that. And next we'll go in and start looking at how we can add stuff to a sketch group. So I myself do not really like putting a bunch of stuff in one sketch. But there have been things added that may change my mind on this and have actually made it where you can group things together real nice. So in the past, if you came in and I finished this real quick, and I came in to extrude this and I did the whole sketch at once. Let me reset my dialog. We're able to do that, but this may not be the result you really want. Maybe you want this to be a boss here with a hole in the middle or something in that manner. So one option we have is we do have our curve rules still. We could come in here and say connected curves, select that one, come in here again, and continue to do that. But here you can see what happens here is we end up with a solid, we'll reverse this, and so on. And I would have to keep on going. But it can get muddy at times if you have a very complex sketch. So, whoops, let me undo this again and get back to our sketch, and I'll show how we can group stuff together. So we have this nice little option now that allows us to go in and actually group things. So if I start clicking on my curves here and I right click, we have an area called New Sketch Group. Let's just go ahead and call this Profile and say OK. If I pull my toolbar out here, you'll notice now that we have a group called Profile. I can go ahead and hide that. Turn it off and on and hide it. If I want to continue on, we can come in here and create another group, and we'll just call this Boss. Now I have my Boss group and my Profile group. Now this is a simple sketch, but you can imagine if you had an imported sketch, such as the break disc that we had earlier, you may want to group stuff like this. So that was an imported sketch that I took from another software, brought it in and made it a sketch, and I put it all in one sketch. So if I come to extrude now, within my curve rules, I have the ability to come in here and come down and find curves and grooves. I go ahead and pick that. I have my one. And then if I come back over here, I have my other group, and let's reverse that. And now we have the results that we want. So there's a lot of things that have been added to the sketch that can really, really help you out if you take your time at the beginning to learning. So as we've seen here, I've shown you how you can use relations, how you can relax the relationships, the persistent relations. We showed you how you have the option to either use object action or action object. Additionally, I'm going to go in next. I'm going to show selecting points, how we can rotate and move stuff. And then I'll show you how you can change the text size with the dimensions. So we'll get into a little bit of those. And what I'll do now is we're going to go ahead and open up our disc break again. and look at some of this. With the disc brake open, let's go ahead and get into our sketch here. And I'm going to go in and we're going to rotate some information. So we have this rotate drag, and we also have this area called work region. If I hit my W, or if I just select it up here, work region, I can actually come in and select my area I want to work with. I'm going to go ahead and select a different cursor selection this time, just so we can get it a little bit easier. And I'm going to select that there. Now that's my work region. Notice how I have information there now that I just want to go in and select those particular curves, and it is now my work region. Next, I want to come in and I'm going to go to this rotate drag. When I do the rotate drag, you'll notice that we have this area here that I can actually move. That's the area if I wanted to actually rotate the information. Let's go ahead and I'm going to select this information here. I'm going to move my rotate drag back into the center here. And if I come in, notice right now I'm not able to rotate it. Why is that? Because I don't have my relax relations on. Let's go ahead again and select that. I'm going to move this out of the way just so it's a little bit easier to select. Select my information. You can see now my relationships here that are relaxed. If I rotated this right now, it would rotate about this point. But that's not what I want, so I'm going to go ahead and drag this back over to my center. And now I'm able to actually go in and easily rotate my sketch. So this is a nice little function that's been added that allows you to go in and rotate information pretty quickly and be able to control it real nice. Now to turn that off, all we need to do is go back up here, rotate drag, and turn it off. Notice we still have a work region though. In this case, let's go ahead and I could have hit my W, which is my hotkey as you can see here, or I can come up here and turn this to entire sketch, and we are back to our entire sketch. So let's go ahead and finish this sketch here. First, I want to come back and put my selection back to rectangle because that's what I'm used to. And we're going to come in and finish this. So I'm going to come back and jump into our model that we were looking at originally here in our sketch and show a few little things. So the first thing I want to do is show this what's called break and shake, or shake and break. You go ahead and click your line, you go ahead and shake your mouse, and you notice how it breaks from the sketch now. It goes in and actually breaks any of my constraints that I have. It's a nice little way that you can actually go in there and break your constraints. Additionally, if we come in here and I select my dimension and we hit Control and Up key, you notice our dimensions can get larger or smaller on our screen. That's just a visual thing that you can utilize for yourself, especially if you get a really busy sketch and you want to go in there and make it a little bit cleaner. You can go in and use that. Let's go ahead and undo this again so we get back to where my curve is actually connected. And let's finish this. And let's look at how we can include a sketch into a curve into a sketch. So this time I'm going to create another sketch. I'm going to create on this particular face. And if I come in here and I start to sketch something, let's just go ahead and sketch this. At this time, if I wanted to include this particular curve, I could. I could also come in here and select this, wait for this to come up, get my edge, and this time I want to make it linear. And you'll see that we get this dotted line here and it includes that particular edge. However, we could do that in the opposite manner. I could come in and include the edge first. Now we have our included edge and I could use that within my sketch. So at times you may have to go in there and include your curves. Now, the one thing you want to watch, if you're bringing in geometry from another system, so as we did with the IGES file earlier, if you want those curves to be included into a sketch that you can actually manipulate and change and all that, do not use the include here. You want to make sure you say add curves. So those are some of the tricks and tips throughout the sketch here that we have. So we're now in the Q&A. I do want to point out, as I pointed out earlier, you can subscribe on our YouTube channel. Within our YouTube channel, as I stated earlier, we do have a lot of nice videos in there, not for only NX, but also Solid Edge and our Team Center, along with our CAM side of NX. You can also email me at bryanfischer@prolim.com. And now I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor for any of these questions and answers.